What's going on, guys? So we are still in this 2024 Toyota Tundra Crew Max. This is a capstone edition, which is their top-of-the-line trim package, and this has the iForce Max twin-turbo hybrid V6 engine. Now, this is going to be a driving evaluation of this truck, because there's a lot of folks out there who, I guess whenever you're looking at half-ton trucks, you may not even consider the Tundra because you've always owned a Ford, a Chevy, a GMC, or a Ram truck. And when you think about Tundra, you think about it as this completely different type of truck that wouldn't be for someone who owns those trucks or who has owned those trucks. And I think in some cases you consider it brand loyalty because you think that Toyota might not be an American-made vehicle, when in fact the Tundra in many ways is more American-made than any of the other big three domestic brands. So that said, let's take this truck, which was manufactured in San Antonio, Texas, out on the road today. We're going to see how this thing performs under normal driving conditions. It's cool to do off-road courses. It's cool to drive these things through extreme conditions, of course, but at the same time, 99% of people who buy this truck, especially in a capstone trim, are going to be buying this truck as an everyday vehicle to get them around town, to get them to and from work, and they're not really going to subject it to crazy off-road conditions. So we're going to see how this thing performs, and we're going to give you an evaluation. Hang tight, I'll be right back. So this specific truck is, again, supposed to be kind of the pinnacle of what Toyota produces from a pickup truck perspective. It's 2024, so it's the newest generation of this truck. It's got the most powerful version of the engine inside of it. It's a hybrid V6. They no longer offer a V8 option in the Tundra. Right now it's in hybrid mode. The engine's shut off, and if I make small movements, it's all being done through the electric motor and not through the actual gas motor. It's got a full digital front display cluster. It's got a huge infotainment screen right here, and it's got a great wide center console. The colors, the tones of the interior scream luxury. They scream high-end. You know, just like if you get into a Denali or you get into a King Ranch truck or a Laramie Longhorn, they all have their own kind of take on luxury in terms of what the interior should look like. And I think from a capstone perspective from Tundra, this nails it because it feels and looks absolutely luxurious. All right, so right off the bat, the sound you hear from the interior obviously is not the sound that the actual truck is making from the exterior. Yes, they've done some baffling, they've done some very interesting things with the exhaust to give it a pleasant tone from the outside, but it's still a V6, twin turbo hybrid V6, which means it's not going to sound like a V8. However, from the inside, it sounds like a pretty dang powerful V8. It does have a camera rear view mirror, which I've absolutely fallen in love with. Since having the GMC with it, you know, when I first started seeing trucks come out with these camera rear view mirrors, I thought it was a little gimmicky. But now that we've had one and we've been using it for a year, you know, every time I have a truck that has one of these mirrors, I love it. It's just really, really great. You see so much more of what's going on. And if you have any type of obstruction between the cab and the back of the truck, it's not blocking your rear view mirror like it might normally be. You know, from an acceleration perspective, I would say this would stomp our Duramax Denali easily, hands down. With 437 horsepower and 583 pound-feet of torque, this truck is an absolute rocket. It really is. You, right off the bat, would feel as if you have a powerful V8 under the hood. The turbo lag on this thing is minimal. You really don't feel it that much. It's there, just slightly, but I don't think it makes you feel as if it's there, if that makes sense. You really have to know that this is a twin-turbo V6 and then get on it to kind of realize that there might be a little bit of turbo lag there, but not much, if any. This produces so much low-end torque that it really just rockets off the line like it would if it had a huge, powerful V8 engine in it. And again, one of the concerns that a lot of people have whenever getting into a truck like this is the perception that they're not going to have the power that they're looking for or the capability that they're looking for because the truck has a V6 in it and not a V8. You know, I think Ford kind of proved the fact that a powerfully equipped V6 can give you everything you're looking for that typically would come in a V8 package. You know, since the EcoBoost has come out, I really think that they've redefined what people's expectations are when it comes to trucks. And shoot, even the 3-liter LZO Duramax diesel that we have in our Denali truck kind of redefines what you can expect to get in a half-ton truck. And I think this iForce Max that you get in the Toyota Tundra is no different. It's an absolute beast, produces a tremendous amount of horsepower and torque. It does it all within the RPM range that you're looking for, and it's going to do it reliably for a long time because it's Toyota. I mean, Toyota has essentially perfected engines, and they've built incredibly reliable engines. And for anybody who doubts the performance, go to a dealership and test drive one. I think it'll put a smile on your face, and it's certainly going to make you change your belief in terms of displacement always winning out, because it doesn't these days. It really doesn't. From a ride perspective, that's the interesting thing about this truck. It does not ride like a half-ton truck, in my opinion. And what I mean by that is, I've driven a lot of half-ton trucks, including many of the most luxurious Ram trucks, from the Limited to the Laramie Longhorn, one with air suspension, the other one without. I've driven the Rebel, which has more of an off-road tuned suspension. I've driven Ford F-150 King Ranches, STX packages, Limited, Platinums. I've driven just about every truck that's out there, including the Denali we have, as well as a Denali Ultimate that had the air suspension on it. And this does not, in my opinion, compete against really any of those in terms of just sheer ride quality. The reason why I say that is because this truck feels like it's a borderline 3/4 ton truck. So that's the difference here. This truck truly, to me, feels as if it's a borderline 3/4 ton. What do I mean by that? I mean, the suspension in it feels firmer. It feels a bit rougher in terms of when you hit bumps and you go over expansion joints or down bumpy roads. You feel it a little bit more in this truck. And it's not uncomfortable. It's not what I would consider to be, you know, not smooth. That's definitely a smooth riding truck, especially on smooth roads like this. But again, it does feel as if the suspension is a little firmer. And this truck does have the air suspension in the back. So it's a multi-link rear suspension with air springs. And there's no coil springs, there's no leaf springs in the back of this truck. Again, it's all air. And the truck still somehow feels a little bit firmer, a little bit, and I'm going to use the term rougher, when you go over bumps than the other trucks. Even our Denali, which has traditional leaf sprung suspension on the back of it. That said, though, it's not unpleasant. So I don't think anybody getting in this truck, driving it for the first time, would feel as if it's a bad driving truck or if it's a rough driving truck. It just doesn't feel as smooth as some of these other high-end luxury trucks. I would probably say a good comparison, it feels like you would expect a half-ton truck to feel maybe 5 to 6 years ago. Before half-ton pickup trucks were equipped with super soft, squishy suspension, because I think nowadays, whenever you go and you buy a luxury high-end half-ton truck, you're really looking for a truck that gives you kind of the ride characteristics of a luxury SUV. And this, in my opinion, does not feel like a luxury SUV. It is certainly a luxury pickup truck. There's no doubt about it. It's got tons of tech. It's got heads-up display. It's got every type of crash mitigation you can imagine. Radar cruise control, lane departure avoidance. It's got all sorts of technology features. It has auto-leveling front headlights to it. It is super, super cool. It's loaded with tech, but it still feels like a pickup truck. It does not feel like you're in a luxury SUV. And I think to some degree, the folks at Toyota want you to feel as if you're in a pickup truck. They want you to still have that expectation of being in a tough, capable truck with a lot of capability. And this truck certainly gives you that. It feels more massive and more significant than when I'm driving my GMC. It actually feels like I'm driving a 3/4 ton truck. They've done a great job of making the truck feel big, bulky, manly, in your face, as it's like this tough pickup truck. Because if they made this in a 3/4 ton platform and they kept the same body, it would feel right at home, especially with these large tow mirrors that this truck's equipped with. So you get the things in this truck that you're looking for if you want that feeling of being in a big truck. It's got all the elements. Now, one thing I had mentioned, and I can't really show you right now, but maybe I can take a clip of a video I took earlier. The headlight output on this truck is absolutely insane. It is perfect. It's brilliant. It casts so much bright light on the road in such an even, uniform swath. They've done a great job. The cutoff line, or essentially that line where the light ends and the darkness begins whenever you're driving up to a wall or something at night, the cutoff line is super crisp. It's really, really great what Toyota's been able to do with the headlights on this truck, and they work exceptionally well at night. They are a notch above the GMC Denali that we have, which has good headlights. And this is kind of a quad LED headlight system that you have on this truck. So the headlights themselves are 4 projectors, and 3 of them are on with your normal headlights, and then 4 of them come on with your high beams. But it's kind of cool if you pull up to a wall and you realize that you have 3 projectors all kind of merging together in front of the truck, because you can absolutely see the cutoff line and the output of all 3 projectors when they're on in normal headlight mode. Now, yeah, you floor this truck, you really feel it accelerate quickly. And you can hear it too, I'm sure. Just, it sounds like a really, really powerful truck. One thing I will tell you, probably the most annoying feature of this truck, if I had to come up with one thing that I really don't like about it when you're driving, is at any speed, if you're not wearing your seatbelt, the dinging noise that reminds you to put your seatbelt on, it starts off kind of soft, kind of subtle, but then it amplifies by like 3 times to the point to where it's just unnecessarily annoying. And I say that because there's certain times where I need to move the truck around, maybe just around the yard or the driveway, and I'm not moving it very far, and the noise becomes so obnoxiously loud that you put your seatbelt on just to move the vehicle around your yard. And that's something that I don't really care for. I wish they kept it a little bit more subtle and it didn't turn into this blaring sound. And I actually recorded that in another video, so if you check out one of the other videos where we're towing the RV, I'll let you kind of hear what that sound is all about. So cruising in this truck is great. It really is. It's super comfortable. The seats are absolutely amazing. You know, it's one of those trucks that you could spend a long time in if you're driving on a long trip. Again, if you hit a lot of bumps, if you're going over super rough roads, then yes, the suspension isn't quite as soft as you might feel in other half-ton trucks, but it's definitely still a smooth driving truck, especially on roads like this. So I've pointed this out in other videos. It's a huge screen. It's like a 14-inch screen. There is great resolution to the screen, so you can see things nice and clear. I think somebody mentioned in a video that they saw the front gauge layout and they thought it was low resolution. It is not low resolution. It has a very, very high resolution front cluster as well as infotainment system. They absolutely have a great screen in both places. So this is not one of those things where, you know, the screen looks like it's old or dated. It does not at all. The screen over here is nice. It's a huge screen. It's in your face, but if you look at every option in here, and I got to subscribe to this stuff, it's all massive. It feels like the fonts, it feels like everything was kind of blown up unnecessarily. Now, I get that it's easier to touch the screen. It's easier to get to something because you're not having to deal with smaller icons. But the one thing that I don't really care for about this is the fact that because everything is so large and so massive, I feel like they had an opportunity to put more information on the screen, like to do split screen information, to be able to have navigation on one side and more information on the other. Like, I can't seem to find a dedicated home screen. Now, I'm sure this might be it, but I have to subscribe to their service in order for me to be able to see what this screen gives me, but obviously your navigation's included in it. I just feel as if with a 14-inch screen, they could have put a lot more information on the screen without it feeling crammed. Because, you know, shoot, other trucks have smaller screens, which they do pack a lot more information on, and they do start to feel crammed. But when you have something this big, you could easily put, you know, kind of like a split screen or a quad screen type view. So you could have navigation, your radio information, maybe weather information, maybe news. You could have all sorts of information on this screen at once. I do know that when you have these super large screens, they tend to pull your eye away from the road. So having less to choose from probably makes sense. But that's kind of where I think some of these screens are getting a little too large. They're getting so large that you either put a ton of information on them or you don't put a lot of information on them and you just make everything larger. And I kind of feel Toyota went that route with this truck. What would have been kind of cool is if they put maybe a passenger control section on this screen, where maybe this part of the screen, maybe 30% of the right side of the screen was dedicated to passenger controls, to where they could input navigation information and things like that, because the passenger arguably sits just as far from the screen as the driver does. And to reach all the way over here doesn't really make much sense for a driver because of how large the screen is. But for a passenger, it'd be really easy for them to access. So even if there's just a strip on the side here that gave a passenger the ability to input information and do things, that would probably be a pretty nice convenience feature. Okay, so we are approaching in what I consider to be one of the worst roads in town. And yeah, this specific road is in dire need of resurfacing, repaving, complete tear out and rebuilding. And this road is a great road to go on if you want to test the suspension out on anything. So much so that it's the same road that I went on when I towed the RV down here. Now, one of the ways you can tell how rough or smooth the road is by how the suspension is taking it and transferring that shock into the truck. And obviously how I'm talking and how it's changing how I talk, right? This road may not look that rough, but it is insanely rough. And part of the reason for that is this road sometimes floods. And when it floods, it turns into a rutted out mess. But a good road to go on to give you my impressions on how I feel this truck handles a rough road or a bumpy ride. So again, feels a lot like a 3/4 ton. Maybe not quite as much. It's probably a stretch to say it feels just like a 3/4 ton. But it's definitely bouncing me around a little bit. It definitely is not as smooth as like a Denali or even like a Ford or Ram Limited. And it gets a little worse up here too. It's definitely a bit of a firmer ride than you get on some of the other trucks. That said, it's not what I would consider to be unpleasant. It's a far cry from where my F450 is, for example, or your typical F350, or even most lower trim 3/4 ton trucks. It's like I said, it's a far cry from that. And overall, it's a compliant ride. It's just like I said, the suspension feels a little firmer. And I do feel with the air suspension in the back, they had the ability to tweak that a little bit. Yeah, overall, my impressions of this truck are that I like it. I like everything about the truck. It's a great truck in general. I'm a big fan of the technology that they give you. I'm a big fan of all the safety features. I think they could have executed on some things a little differently. Please bring back tow hooks on the front of a 4-wheel drive truck. I think they're super important. Overall though, I do like the truck. But I'd love to hear from you all. What do you guys think? Leave a comment below, please. I'd love to know your opinion on the different videos I've done on this specific truck. Again, I'm trying to give you more of like an every person's perspective of how this truck is, because I think that that's typically the type of review that you're going to want to know, because it's going to be more tailored to how I think the average person drives their vehicle. Anyways, guys, I sure hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't had a chance, please take a moment, subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, and we'll talk to you again very soon.